We, for the most part, are the third and fourth generations of offsprings of many former slaves. We grew up on the banks of the Dan River in a small segregated town in southwest Virginia named Danville, and known as the last capital of the Confederacy. The town was founded in 1783 as a tobacco inspection station. It became an industrial center for the processing of tobacco and textile manufacturing. There was great excitement in the air in 1936 as students in the old Westmoreland High School building watched as a new high school building was being constructed on the corner of Gay and Holbrook streets.
Yeah, the last year, that little white building that we attended, we could look out at the window and see the foundation for the new Langston going up. And of course, I was delighted to know that they were building a new school, but I was a little saddened at the fact that I would not be able to attend school in the new building.
The new building was named for an outstanding pioneer who spoke truth to power, John Mercer Langston. Some of his accomplishments included finishing Oberlin College, practicing law, serving as assistant superintendent of the Freedmen's Bureau, establishing the Howard University School of Law, where he served as dean and vice president, serving as president of Virginia State University, and serving as U.S. Congressman from Virginia. Is regarded as one of the great blacks in American history. The lion, as a mascot for the new high school, was appropriately symbolic of his tenacity. The Langston High School was standing on a rich educational legacy. The Freedmen's Friends Association of Philadelphia, founded by the Quakers, came to Danville in the fall of 1865 and established a relief center with headquarters. The association, with the help of the Freedmen's Bureau, opened a school for former slaves using a 50-foot by 100-foot old Confederate hospital overlooking the railroad depot from a summit called Dance Hill. One of the primary activities of the association was the establishment of schools for the freedmen. By the fall 1867, schools were operating in 19 locations in Virginia and North Carolina. There were 2 dedicated superintendents and fearless teachers who made great sacrifices to come to the South and teach eager former slave children and adults in the rudiments of education under great intimidation. Both day and night classes were conducted. The Quakers stayed in the city for a period of 16 years. Through the normal division, they trained over 1,000 students who became teachers. 2 of their outstanding students were William A. Yancey and William F. Grasty. When the 8-room school was opened in the fall of 1881 on Holbrook Street, and later named Westmoreland, William A. Yancey, grandfather of Howard Yancey, class of 1950, served as principal.
Had a new physical ed teacher, a Mr. David Brown, who came to us from Washington, D.C., who was requiring someone to write an alma mater for the new school, and mine was accepted. The math teacher at that time harmonized the melody for me, and I wrote the words. And the words go thus. Proudly we sing of halls where our swift feet have trod, seeking to bring to light the wondrous gifts of God. Where in thy chambers we have sought success to gain, Langston, dear Langston, may thy spirit ever reign. O pride of our hearts, may we forever be guided by spirit true to thee, to thee. We cherish thy precepts, high, noble, and true. Langston, dear Langston, we sing of you. We were so happy to have a school. That, those words, proudly and pride, doesn't mean false pride. We were just appreciative of the fact that we had auditorium, gymnasium, a cafeteria. Those things were very important to us.
Still Langston when it was begun. And I came here a few years later, but he was still here. And I taught under Mr. Gibson until he expired. After that time, Richard L. Armstead came in, and I worked under him for a few years, maybe 4 years. And Mr. Armstead left. He was followed by C.D. Page. He was an excellent, all of them were good principals. I just have to think about that point as an afterthought. Mr. Page did an awful lot to get students into colleges. He would even take out time on weekends to take them to the college. Following Mr. Page, we had John H. Bird as a principal. Mr. Bird was our pilot until we left this building in the fall of 1958 to go to a new, beautiful building, but a building with no memories at that time that this school had, and I don't think any memories as pleasant as those that were here ever came our way over there. It was nice, yes, a beautiful school, nice students, enlarged faculty, increased facilities, nice leadership. Mr. Bird was followed by Mrs. Murphy, and Ms. Murphy remained with us until Langston was changed over to a junior high school, and the high school was merged with George Washington High School. After that time, I went to George Washington High School, where I stayed 4 years and worked under 2 head principals.
I was born in North Carolina. My parents moved here in my early teens, and I finished Westmoreland High School in 1924. One could teach then right out of high school, and that's what I did. So my first years, I didn't mention having taught down in Halifax County, right out of the old Westmoreland High School. Didn't make much money, but I would have done better making money if I'd gone somewhere maybe and gotten me a real job. But I went to college in Durham, North Carolina. For some reason, I wanted to go back to my home state, and I went to Durham to North Carolina College, which is now North Carolina Central University. After coming from Central, I went down to Statesville, my hometown, and taught there 2 years. Then I came back and taught in Pennsylvania County before coming into the city of Danville. And when I came into the city of Danville as a teacher, the opening was in the 3rd grade. And I taught the 3rd grade Then later, I was moved to the 7th grade, and I taught 7th grade for a while. When I started teaching 7th grade, I was in the high school then, because the 7th grade at that time was part of high school, in that white building that's been torn down, a little old white building that was torn down. I started teaching in 1930. I had to work to get some money to go to college. I came into the new building as a teacher and guidance counselor. I did part of each. I was in the classroom part of the day and in counseling the other part of the day. Young people were led to feel, we felt they needed to feel the importance of education. The first goal was to finish high school and then to go on and further their education if at all possible, because we felt that education was going to be a big, big help in their life. And that was what we wanted them to feel proud of themselves and to want to advance. And if it were not possible for them to go beyond high school, we wanted them to get a good high school foundation and put that at its best and keep learning. We were anxious to see our young people advance themselves, and as they advanced themselves, they would advance the race and the community in which they lived. I can remember when I became principal, someone from the central office came up to talk to me and tell me about some of the things that I might expect. And among them, they said that I might expect a lonely life. And all in all, it can get to be lonely. But if you like it, if you enjoy it, if you feel that you are helping young people or you're inspiring them, and as we work with young people, not only in the classroom, but in plays, we had winning plays from this school as they competed with other high schools at Virginia State. Then we had a choir. We had choirs that were very good, and they would win at the state level. And then I need not even mention, because just to say athletics at that time brings to everybody's mind how we won in all the areas, basketball and football. Of course, they were the two outstanding areas of competition at that time. And we won in both. We were one of the dreaded schools. We wanted them, as I keep saying, to be proud of themselves and to be anxious to advance themselves and to be the kind of people that we could all be proud of. We were anxious to see our young people advance themselves, and as they advanced themselves, they would advance the race and the community. We worked real hard on speech. Well, then we went into behavior and being neat and clean. We emphasized all of those things. We feel like we didn't do a bad job. We're proud of our young people as we look at those, or shall I say those that are here tonight. We're very proud of you. We watch you as you go on, do things in life. We read about you in the newspaper. We hear about you over the news media. And sometimes we meet a parent who will come up to us and say, you know, my son or my daughter's doing such and such a thing. And we're just as proud and chesty as we can be.
about a block and a half from the Dan River Cotton Mills. On April 16, 1908, I must have been around 5. I walked up that railroad from Schoolfield to Lovetown. And then I went to the Almagro School. It was then called the Pennsylvania Industrial Institute, I believe. When I went over there, I started in the 3rd grade. So I finished 11th grade over there. And by that time, they had added the 12th grade to the Presbyterian Industrial School, high school on Harvard Street. So I went there and took my 12th year in high school. But I had a sister who was living in West Virginia at that time, and a friend of hers who had finished Bluefield told her about that, and so I went out and lived with her. So I took 1 year short normal course and began teaching. Then I went back to college and completed my college course and came to Danville and secured a job in the English department of the, at that time, Westmoreland High School, and then which later became the John M. Langston High School. And there I remained until 1966 when I retired. I began teaching at $52 a month. And after 33 years of teaching in high school in Danville, Virginia, I retired not having made as much as $6,000 a year. This was during the 60s when they were having all of those demonstrations. Well, they were having meetings at High Street, and some people were getting out in the streets demonstrating, and then some people put up bail for the people who had to go to jail. So I just thought this was one way. I knew I couldn't get out there and demonstrate, so I just wanted to support it in some way. So I bought this life membership, $500 life membership, which was a large sum for me at that time. The 33 years that I spent at Langston certainly provided a wonderful experience for me. There were some days that probably weren't as pleasant as they could have been, and that some of you, at least at that time, and many of us since that time, have realized what I was really trying to do for you. And during my 33 years at Langston, I did my best to help you to become the best qualified student that you could be, and the best, whether it was for whether you were preparing yourself to go to college or to become a mother, a housewife, whatever you set your mind to be. I wanted you to learn to do, as I have told you many times, I put up on my thoughts of the week on my bulletin board and so forth, if a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing well. So that is what I try to instill in you. And I know from the many expressions that I get from you from time to time as I meet many of you, I know that my time was not wasted.
Danville, Virginia was one of those minor movements that tells us all about the strength and the unity of the black community under attack. It tells us about the average southern town. Here was a town controlled by Dan River Mill. So typical of movement. It was the ministers of that town that led it and stuck by it and made it.
We have been too long denied the opportunities to work according to our capabilities. We're on your side and you're on ours. Bless, we pray, these young people and adults, send more laborers into vineyards. touch the hearts of our people all over Danville and help them to come running and crying, what can I do?
What did you think when you walked up and saw the fire trucks pulling up? There is not enough water in heaven and earth to quench the flame of hot freedom that burns in our hearts.
If this type of thing continues, as it's continuing here now, we see nothing else to do but to continue to demonstrate.
Well, you say if you can see some sign of progress, how long are you willing to wait to watch?
When you say how long are we willing to wait, we are not going to continue to prolong or put off demonstrations for any length of time. When I say length of time, we're not going to allow it to be so extended that it will kill the enthusiasm and the courage that is presently within the hearts of our people.
A vicious police force. I've seen some brutal things on the part of policemen all across the South in our struggle, but very seldom, if ever, have I heard of a police force being as brutal and vicious as the police force here in Danville, Virginia. And you have stood up amid this with great courage. You have done it with great discipline and great dignity.
From here on out, when we ask the colored people to disperse, we hope that they will disperse with the same attitude that our white people have been compelled to do for the last few weeks. And in the event they do not, we're going to use whatever our command to enforce this decision.
Came to Danville in 1956 as a French teacher. I wanted to go to Alexandria, but I waited around and Virginia State kept sending me various schools that wanted me to come for an interview, and so I came up here to see Mr. Beard. He hired me on the spot, and I taught French for 10 years, and then I became a French English teacher. After Ms. Thorpe retired in '66, I became head of the English department at Langston School. In fact, I stayed at Langston from 1956 until '70, when we closed with total integration. And so I was recruited to go to George Washington as the head of the English department by the principal then, Mr. Motley. And so I went over there as head of the English department in 1970, and I stayed there until 1993. And I retired in 1983, taking early retirement. But my intent was to go home and write a book. Until today, I have not written that book, I'm sorry to say. But I've enjoyed what I am doing now, but don't enjoy it as much as I did working with the individual students. They all thought I was an ogre. They came in my room shaking, literally afraid to death because of what they had heard before they got in there. But after they got to know me, we worked beautifully together. And my whole intent was to train those youngsters so that they could go out into society and compete with anybody. They didn't realize that then, but I've had a few to come back and tell me they saw what I was trying to do over the years as they matured, and that was such a compensation for me to hear those remarks from those former students, because I said if I did anything, I wanted them to be the best that they could be. If they were going to be ditch diggers, I wanted them to be the best at that and make themselves known for being the best at the job that they were doing. So I've been in Danville 50 years now. Came here thinking I'd stay a couple of years, but I drank the water and met the youngsters, and here I am in 2006. I would want to say to all the students with whom I work, as well as those that I rushed out of the hall to go to their classes, many of you have done so well, exceeded my expectations in some instances, but that is a great joy to know that you have gone on as young men and women. You have families of your own, but we need you to come back to Danville with some of the expertise and knowledge that you have. We would love to have many of you back here to improve the quality of life in Danville. But the one thing that I remember as I work with you young people, you always have choices. Life presents choices, choices, choices. But you still must make the best choice. You must consider the consequences of your choices and always look forward to a brighter tomorrow. When you look at your lives, you ought to consider the fact that you are mentors for the next generation. What expectations are involved as mentors? Many youngsters look at you and they want to emulate you. They want to pattern after you what you are doing. Whatever it is you're doing, make it the best. As I've always said to you, you have to be the best.
Bonjour, mes élèves, or bon après-midi. I could do that in French or Spanish. I am Ursula M. Smith. I taught French, Spanish, and English. One year I did French and Spanish together. I've always thought that people who knew foreign language were special. That's what I told my students, because they could do something that a lot of people couldn't do. When Mr. John Bird was principal, and enjoyed every year that I had there, I have worked under many principals. And I've always loved to be a foreign language teacher. I love my students because they were special to me, and I felt that I was special to them. Physically, I feel fine, but I have had a stroke, and I am doing very well for the pain and suffering that I had during that time. I am very thankful to God for still being able to think for myself, to carry on for myself, and to take care of myself.